tracking developments in the trial of 3 Tacoma police officers in the death of Manuel Ellis. Thanks for joining us. I'm Christine Pay. Ellis died while being restrained by police in March of 2020. Officers Matthew Collins, Christopher Burbank, and Timothy Rankin are all facing charges in his death. King 5 is live streaming the entire trial from opening to closing statements. We take you now to the courtroom live.
Correct.
And there have been inconsistencies related to what you could see as you drove up Ainsworth, correct?
I didn't believe so, no.
You don't believe that you've been inconsistent in your testimony about where you could see and what you could see?
Are you referring to the vehicles?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I believe I must have misspoken then, but what I am sure about is that I saw them when I was pulling up to the stop sign.
Okay, that's when you saw the police car?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. And you have been inconsistent as to whether Mr. Ellis was on the sidewalk, correct?
I believe I've said he's on the sidewalk every time.
Okay.
But I do think there's some doubt on my own part just because from what I could see, I couldn't see where his feet were. As I've said before, I only saw the top of his head when I first initially saw him.
Okay, so the most you saw is the top of Mr. Ellis's head. Is that accurate?
Going from the back to the front of the police car, yes.
Okay, so other than that, and what we see on your video, you don't have any other information that you recall?
No, I believe I just said sidewalk in the past due to I didn't know where else he could be.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Conrad.
Alright, sorry, I don't want to be scrambling up here for existence. Let's go. Exhibit 151, please, if we could publish that. And actually, can I have Prolumina do that for us, please? And Judge, can I ask the witness to step down for a second and point out the direction again?
Talking about 151,
151.
and you want the witness to step down, that's fine.
And can you point out again the direction you had Mr. Ellis going east-west walking, right?
Yes. So he was coming from this direction, heading towards the west there.
Okay. And can we put an arrow pointing east-west for the direction that he just pointed out that Mr. Ellis was walking? And is that right, Mr. Cowden?
Yes.
Okay. And you saw him walking in that direction when you first noticed him, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you can have a seat. Thank you. And I'm going to admit 151. I don't know what order that we're at right now, but
I think it's F, but I'm not sure.
Oh, no, it's G.
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 151.
There you go. So you've moved to admit exhibit 151G.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
So, Your Honor.
Okay, 151G is admitted.
Okay. And Mr. Cowden, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is kind of these interviews, because I think there's some confusion about the dates of interviews. Just want to kind of clear that up. So the first interview that you gave was in June of 2020 with Mr. Bible. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's after you saw this news article.
Yes.
Okay. And then the next interview that you gave was with Washington State Patrol on October 5th, 2020. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. And Mr. Bible was present there as well, right?
Yes.
And that was done because you wanted him present?
I just didn't want to be alone.
Okay. And then March 8th, 2021, you do another interview with the Attorney General's office, right?
Sounds right.
Okay. And again, Mr. Bible was present there with you, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then February 1st, 2022 is when you do the defense interview with us.
Believe so.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we're good on dates there. And you've talked about the fact that Mr. Bible, who represents the family, has been giving you free legal advice. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And he's been present with you not only at the first interview, but the second interview with Washington State Patrol, as well as the third interview at the Attorney General's office, right?
Correct.
All right. The next thing I want to ask you about is actually the defense interview that took place on February 1st, 2022. And if you remember, prior to that interview, you had been in a scuffle with some other
Your Honor,
gentlemen.
let me check the relevance.
Well, Judge, it is relevant, and if I could have a couple of questions, I'll get there.
Well, you said February 1st, 2022?
Correct. We can take it up outside the presence of the jury.
I thought the interview was in December.
I have February 1st, 2022.
Maybe, was there 2 interviews?
Only one.
Anyway, we can take it out outside the presence of the jury, sure. Excuse us, ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss the case. Okay, everybody can be seated.
You're right, Judge, it is December 1st, so I'll clear that up. December 1st, 2022.
Okay.
There's a lot of dates flying around.
Every once in a while I get one right.
We do. I think it's more than every once in a while.
All right, so what's the issue, Mr. Liu, what are you concerned about?
Mr. Conrad is going to go into an incident involving Mr. Cowden, where there's a physical altercation that doesn't have anything to do with this case or any charges of any kind. There's no relevance to this matter whatsoever.
All right, well,
Well-
should the witness be present for this?
I don't mind, Judge.
Okay, go ahead then.
So there's no, I'm not casting any blame, but so what happened during the defense interview was Mr. Cowden actually, he'd been in an altercation with some other gentlemen. No, I don't know who started it or whatever, it doesn't seem like there was no charges from or anything. But what's significant there was, I was curious because he had an injury to his eye, he had petechial hemorrhages, and he said, well, I said, well, what happened to you? And he said, well, I got choked out, and I had petechial hemorrhages in my eye, I have red petechial hemorrhages in my eye. And that was gonna be my question, that's it. And it's come up in this case, the lack of petechial hemorrhages, and now we have a witness who's actually experienced it they wanna continue to say that Mr. Ellis was choked out. Well, we have an individual who said he was choked out and had petechial hemorrhages. So it's a great example of what happens if an actual chokehold happens.
Well, it wasn't the testimony that such hemorrhaging can occur,
Yeah,
but does it always occur?
it's true, but
So the fact that it can occur and did to this witness doesn't tell us anything about whether Mr. Ellis was choked or not.
well, I think it shows an example of it occurring. It can occur.
Well,
and
they
did
said
occur.
they said it can occur.
Sure.
So how is this different from that?
Well, I don't think the fact that it was kind of an answer, I think, that was couched by the ME to say, well, it's not inconsistent, it's not consistent, right? And I'm gonna try and present every piece of evidence that I can to this jury that shows, hey, if that happened, petechial hemorrhages happen. You see them happening. I'm not disputing that it doesn't happen every time, but this is a prime example of it happening. I mean, what's the bias or prejudice to the state? It's got some relevance to it, clearly.
Why is that?
Well, because it's an example of a chokehold being applied and having petechial hemorrhages.
But everybody's agreed that can happen. You're trying to claim that because he had petechial hemorrhaging after being choked, and that Mr. Ellis did not have petechial hemorrhaging, that he was not choked. That's the logic here, right?
I think it's an example, well, and it goes beyond that, right? Because they asked, the state asked Dr. Mitchell about pressure on Ellis's back, whether that could cause petechial hemorrhages, right? And so we have this scenario where there are multiple things that could have caused petechial hemorrhages, they didn't, and the lack of that, I think, is consistent with the fact that he's not asphyxiated, he's not a hypoxia situation, or even if it is, it's because of cardiac issues. And then, I can give an example of it happening. It's an example involving a witness, and I think that it's.
Are we gonna go into the details of the scuffle?
Nope.
Then how are we gonna compare it?
Well, the word chokehold has been used multiple times in this case.
Yes?
And so that's the same verbiage that Mr. Cowden used in the interview. He said, I got clearly chokehold, and I said, and you got an injury from it, and your eye was bloodshot and had petechial hemorrhages.
All right. Well, I'm convinced. We're not going there.
Okay,
Okay. Objection sustained.
okay.
Let's have the jury back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Welcome.
All I could hear was the high pitch.
If you ever build a new courtroom around here, we're gonna have a sound room, when they get all the mics and all the levels and stuff. Have a sound engineer. Are you hearing that in the back there, Mr. Gaddis, about having a sound engineer for the next courtroom we build right here? Okay, put that on the capital budget, there you go. Welcome back, everyone. Please be seated. Okay, the objection was sustained. Mr. Conrad.
Okay, so, Mr. Cowden, back to the interview. So, June 2020 with Mr. Bible, correct?
From what I know, yes.
Okay. October 5th, 2020 with Mr. Bible in Washington State Patrol.
Yes.
March 8th with Mr. Bible in the Attorney General's office.
Yes.
And then December 1st, not February 1st, December 1st with the defense and
Yes.
the Attorney General's office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were on scene at this incident, you saw one patrol car present, is that right?
Correct.
And you saw 2 officers.
Correct.
Okay. And at the time that you left and you took that corner to go back to your place of work, no other responding officers had arrived, right?
No.
Okay. So the whole time you saw this incident, you saw 2 officers on scene, no other officers.
Correct.
Okay. So our client is Officer Timothy Rankin. Timmy, can you stand up for a second? You never saw this officer on scene during anything that you've described in your testimony today. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure I'd be accurate. I don't know the faces of any of the people that I
Okay,
saw that night.
fair enough. Okay. Thank you, Tim. But, okay, well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Liu, redirect.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You were asked about all these different interviews that you went through or you submitted yourself to. And there's some confusion about the dates, and I believe Mr. Conrad just went over some of those dates with you.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that we got those dates correct. Now, your very first interview was with Mr. Bible, is that correct?
Correct.
And I believe your testimony earlier was that you,
Oh, it's foundational, go ahead.
and you indicated that you spoke to Mr. Bible shortly after reading the newspaper article
Correct.
regarding Mr. Ellis.
Yes.
And do you recall that the newspaper article was dated June 7th, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. And did your interview with Mr. Bible take place shortly after that?
I know it was in the month of June. I believe it was within at least 2 weeks of the first time I saw the newspaper article.
This is the first interview you ever provided to anyone in this
Yes.
case? Okay. And would that be where your memory is the freshest of the event?
Yes.
Okay. Because that occurred 3 months after the incident?
Correct.
Then your next interview you had was with State Patrol, and that was in March of 2020, is that correct?
Yes.
And that was 6 months after the incident? Or,
I believe so. My timeline's a little obscured. I apologize.
Okay. And the next interview then is with the Attorney General's office, which you mentioned, March 8th of 2020?
Yes.
Or 2021, I believe.
Yes.
And the last interview you had was with the defense attorneys here, December 1st, 2022.
Yes.
You were asked a number of questions regarding some of the details of what you saw, and you were asked by Mr. Fricky if you ever saw fists being used. Do you recall that?
I do recall being asked that, yes.
And can I have you refer to Exhibit 836, please, if that is still in front of you?
Yes. A specific page for you?
Yeah, if I could turn your attention, Mr. Kim, to page 9 of Exhibit 836. And I'm going to refer you to line 34 on that page. Okay, and do you see that?
Yes.
And you're being asked a question by the detective, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were asked whether you saw any punches being thrown by either of the officers at Mr. Ellis, is that correct?
Correct.
Or actually, either the officers or Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your answer?
The answer was I saw one officer throwing punches at him, I'm not sure where because the other officer happened to be in my line of sight. This happened during my time of trying to get my phone out to record. That took me about a minute to get it set up for recording.
Thank you. You were also asked a number of questions about your interview with Mr. Bible, and you indicated that that's the recollection is precious during that interview. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can I have you go to Exhibit 830, 837, please? And Mr. Cowden, do you recall being asked questions regarding how Mr. Ellis went to the ground?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay. Can I refer you to page 7 of Exhibit 837, please?
Okay.
I'm going to refer you to line 12 through 13. Do you see that?
I see it, yes.
Okay. And were you asked by Mr. Bible, did you see how he fell to the ground?
Yes.
What was your answer?
With an officer dragging him by the shirt.
You were also asked about what you saw prior to your recording of the video. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can I refer you to page 4 of the same exhibit and line 19?
Okay.
And you were asked what you first saw. Do you remember that, or do you see that?
Yeah, what did I first see?
Yeah. And what was your answer?
I replied with, what I first saw was Manny in front of the police car, which did not give me a reason to record yet. And when I noticed that the car opened his door, he slammed the door into Manny. And at first I thought it was just him opening the door to get out, in a rush. They were aggravated, but then they instantly started jumping on Manny.
And then what did you answer next?
And then Manny started walking away, and the officer in the passenger seat, he moved around the car so fast and they were on him. And then Manny was on the ground before I could even start recording in that brief 4 seconds.
And Mr. Cow, did you also describe what occurred between the officers and Mr. Ellis when they went to the ground?
Yes.
Okay. Refer your attention to page 8. Same exhibit.
Okay.
Starting with page 4, how did you describe what occurred?
Do you mean line 4?
I would object because I'm not sure this is addressing what was brought up by cross as opposed to just redoing their direct examination, which of course is improper redirect.
Let me, can I sit this?
Absolutely.
And I think you said page 4 after you said page 8, so I'm assuming you meant page 8, line 4.
Line 4.
Well,
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. I don't think Mr. Fricke's motion is well taken for the reasons he's indicated, but it may not be a proper use of the deposition, or in this case, interview transcript. Are you using it as a prior inconsistent statement?
No, Your Honor, it's being used to refresh his recollection.
Yeah, but you're not using it that way. You're not saying if you look this and,
Certainly,
You have a
I'll ask it
different-
a different way.
all right, Let's
Mr.
see.
Cowden, can you take a moment to review lines 4 through 14 of your interview with Mr. Bible, Exhibit 837?
well, I do think he has indicated, in general, a lack of recollection about the details of this. So this might appropriately be used to refresh his recollection. If it does so, it may not, but we have to give him the opportunity. So
Thank you.
continue, Mr. Lynn.
And if you could take a moment, Mr. Cowden, to review lines 4 through 14. Once you're finished, go ahead and let me know that you're ready.
Of course, thank you. Okay.
And Mr. Cowden, does that refresh a recollection regarding what occurred between the officers and
Ye-
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you say there?
No, no, no.
Not
Now,
being
what did
any-
you say there? What's your recollection now that you're,
Yeah.
What is your
recollection's
recollection?
refreshed?
Apologize.
Well, that's the iffy thing, is my recollection is just what I said, and 2 years ago on that day. I had the interviews because my memory was freshest then. I don't really recall exactly now, only what is in the transcript in front of me.
Okay. And after I'm sorry, go ahead.
On that basis, I'll sustain the objection.
Do you recall, Mr. Cowden, whether you saw the officers' actions while Mr. Ellis was on the ground, how they were positioned on Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Okay. And what is your recollection?
I remember when Ellis got on the ground, I believe this was after he was tasered, but I'm not quite sure. I remember Manny being on the ground, and then one of the officers was behind Manny and was on his back, I believe with his knee, and the other officer was in front of him, I believe trying to get his handcuffs while assisting the other officer in keeping Manny down.
Do you recall where his knee was?
It was on the back of just on his central back, and then I believe it moved up to his neck as well.
What did you see about that?
I saw the officer's knee was on Manny's neck. I believe the officer let go for a moment, and then once that happened, Manny tried to lift his head up again, and then the officer put his knee back down on the back of Manny's neck.
Do you recall how long his knee was on his neck?
I believe till the end of my video.
Was this during the process where you believed they were trying to handcuff him?
Yes.
Mr. Cowden, you were also asked questions about what you first saw as you reached the scene. When you first reached the intersection, were both officers still in the patrol car?
Yes.
Asked and answered also.
Well, it's been asked a number of times, but I'll let him, because this has come up during cross, so I'll allow him to go back and redirect on it. You may answer the question.
Yes.
And the answer is
The answer is yes.
both officers were still in the patrol car?
Yes.
You were also asked about the view. You're shown a Google image of your view from Ainsworth. Do you
Yes.
recall that? Did that accurately reflected your view that night?
Not with the 100%. No.
Why is that?
It just seemed different. I know that also on that website that you get the images from, like the Google Street View, from what I know.
Hold on.
To that, what's the response?
Well, really, what we're asking here, I think, Mr. Cowden, is to compare your recollection of what your view was down Ainsworth that evening to exhibit, I think it's 150A. Do I have the right exhibit number?
I think it's the last one that was there.
What is it?
542, I believe.
Exhibit 2542, okay, thank you. And how is it different? How is 2542 different from your recollection of your view that evening? That's the question.
The recollection I had is different simply because of the time of day, as well as I just don't remember it looking that way through my memories. My memory was at night, I was driving. Everything went from 0 to 100 when I saw the front of the cop car. I don't even remember anything before I saw the cop vehicle.
If I could have one more.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Recall what, Your Honor? Sorry, Mr.
Re-
Chairman.
recross.
That won't take very long. As far as a moment ago, your description as to what you saw when they were struggling, they meaning the two officers and Mr. Ellis,
Yes.
you indicated to Mr. Bible, you were describing whatever was in the video, because you were videotaping at that time, right?
Yes.
And so, if the videotape is inconsistent with your oral description here, based on your recollection, the videotape would overrule your.
Objection, this is.
I'm gonna permit this question. He's kind of said this himself already.
Yeah, that's why the
Why the
video.
video-
That's why the video's there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you don't have a perfect recollection as you sit here today, regardless of how many times your recollection is refreshed, right?
Even with 5 interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the videotape in your mind that controls what you saw. Is that right? Fair to say?
It's fair to say.
Okay. And, and you told Mr. Bible, in fact, when you're interviewed in whatever time in June of 2020, whenever it was, or even in July, depending on the weeks, that most of what you saw was in that video.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Hermans.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Cowan, a few more questions. Sean, you mind? Hold on. Mr. Cowan, you testified that you found the name James Bible in a newspaper article, correct?
Yes.
And that was a TNT article, which is Exhibit 840, which has not been admitted, but you saw it earlier, did you?
TNT.
Tacoma News Tribune.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's the article.
Okay, and once that's up, is it up? Take a look at that and tell me where you see the name James Bible in that article. Or if you see it.
I don't see it on this part of the article. No.
Okay, so is that exhibit not the entire article?
I do not believe so. No.
Okay. Another separate exhibit. So, okay, so yeah, Sean is gonna scroll through all the pages, so we just tell us when you want us to move to the next page. And then
Sure.
Just review it and tell me if you see the name James Bible anywhere in that article.
I believe all of these exhibits you're showing me are the pictures I took of the newspaper article in my possession, right?
Okay.
Yeah. The way I saw it was actually in the newspaper. This is just the front cover, which got my attention. But if you see in this middle picture here, it says "See Investigation 6A." I had to go through the newspaper to find more information about the case.
Okay, so that picture, you took that picture?
I believe I took all of these, yes, of the newspaper we're seeing here.
Why did you do that?
They was asked in the subpoena for evidence.
Okay, by who? Who subpoenaed you?
I believe Washington State, the state attorney.
State asked for that information,
Yes.
and now you took those pictures and provided that to the state?
Yes.
All right, but nowhere in what you gave them does it say anything about James Bible?
Not in there, no.
Okay, all right. And your testimony earlier was that you called Mr. Bible after seeing his name in the newspaper?
Yes.
Right? Are you sure it's that article?
Yes, the one and only.
even though we don't have the name James Bible anywhere in the exhibit.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the interview you gave with Mr. Bible, that was after you had seen other videos associated with this incident, correct?
I can't actually recall that, no.
Okay, so are you aware that there was a doorbell video in this case?
Yes, I'm aware of the Sarah's video and the doorbell.
Okay, and were you aware of those at the time that you met with Mr. Bible?
I'm not sure.
Is it possible that they had just come out, you had just witnessed them, and then reached out to Mr. Bible?
It is possible.
Is it possible that having seen those other videos influenced some of the things you told Mr. Bible?
No.
It's not possible?
No. I came to Mr. Bible independently.
Okay, all right. Now, do you know whether you'd seen those other videos or not when you spoke with him?
I don't recall, no.
Okay, would seeing your interview with Mr. Bible refresh your recollection as to whether you saw other videos?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, flip into that exhibit, it's 837,
Okay.
and it's page 11. I would direct you to review say lines 11 through 16.
Yes, acknowledged.
And so, do you recall now whether you reviewed other videos before you gave that interview?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so you had seen those?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And you gave this interview with Mr. Bible in June.
Yes.
And had those videos had you witnessed them or viewed them just recently?
Yes, I didn't see them by coming across them. I had to look for them because I believe I saw that news article and it mentioned one of the videos or something, and that's where I looked at the other two videos.
How did you come across those other videos?
Just Googled Manuel Ellis's name.
Did you see comments associated with the videos, like on
No.
media or anything?
No, I watched them like on like TNT basically. Yeah, I don't think comments were even there.
Okay, what about, any interviews of Ms. McDowell or other people?
No interviews, but the videos, yes.
All right, but in reviewing this, and if you look at that page I just showed you, it sounded like you had a fair amount of information about this case. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you had information that Mr. Ellis was on methamphetamine, correct?
Yes.
All right, and did that influence anything in this case?
Yes, that was actually why I wanted to share the video too, or what made me think about the case, was that just that he was on meth and whatnot, but the case was being investigated further. Something to do with the coroner or something caught my interest.
The interview you gave with Mr. Bible is a pretty short interview, is it not?
Yeah,
As compared to the other interviews, it was quite a bit shorter,
definitely.
right? And so Mr. Bible, it told you he represented the family, right?
Right.
He just asked you a few questions.
Yes.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Conrad,
I don't have anything further on.
Mr. Liu,
Nothing further on.
Mr. Fricke.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, you aren't, thank you.
Okay. All right, so, Mr. Cosby, you are excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next one is Mr. Liu.
The next witness is Ayana White, but I believe there's a matter that I think we need to take outside precedent.
Oh, okay. Well, gentlemen, please excuse us. Oh, that's right, this thing that came up. I don't think it'll take too long. Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse us for a few minutes while we have this conversation. Please do not discuss the case. Okay, this has to do with these notes,
Yes, Your Honor, this is
all right,
897, and we're withdrawing our objection.
okay.
Well, there's not a need to laugh about it. I think there are other people here that may have an objection, Your Honor. I'm not the only defense attorney.
I'm well aware of that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thought I had no idea. Yes.
Never hurts. Anyway, what's the problem? Is there a problem? Any of the defense lawyers have a problem with this?
I have no problem.
All right, is she expected to have this with her during her testimony?
I believe she indicates she's anxious.
That she what?
She's anxious, may suffer from anxiety. That she-
Can't imagine why she'd feel anxious having to sit here in front of all these people and television and everything. Why would that make anybody nervous?
And she indicated that she wrote out statements that would help her refresh her recollection. And so if it comes to that, then the state will lay the proper foundation for her.
So is she carrying this to her with the stand, or are you gonna give it to her when she has a memory problem?
I will give it to her when she indicates.
When she what?
I will give it to her when she indicates she does need to refer to it.
Okay. I suspicion that whether she refers to it or not, we're gonna hear about it from the defense. I have no idea what it says, but you are standing again, Mr. Osser. This usually means you wanna say something.
I just want to be the tallest person to take it. It's the only way I can be.
Okay. You're ready to have the witness? Okay, so you have nothing to say, you're just standing there. Okay, there you go, okay.
Your Honor, just one quick thing, just timing wise, I don't know how long the defense thinks they're gonna go, we're just trying to decide whether we need to have another witness here at 3:30.
Don't know how long you're gonna go.
Yes, that's true, but assuming it's 30, 45 minutes.
You say 45 minutes, this is at 3. We have a break.
We don't need another, okay,
I
that's,
think it's to the end of the day, probably.
all right, thank you, we just
Okay.
didn't wanna have someone come sit.
No, it's fair enough, and good you took the opportunity to try to sort that out. All right, let's have the jury back then.
Okay. I don't care. I, if, okay. No, I mean,
It's right there.
I'm sorry? It's a note she created, and it has been given an exhibit number. And I couldn't tell you what the exhibit number is, but counsel probably.
Your hand.
and I don't know the name, I am missing that.
Yep,
Judge, I'm just trying to take these exhibits down just so we can have a little bit of,
I'm sorry, say again?
I'm just getting these old exhibits off the stand.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Please be seated. And now your next witness, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Honor. State calls Ayana White Lane.
Yes, ma'am, please come forward to right about here. There you go. Right about there. Great. Please raise your right hand to be sworn. You solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you very much. Please have a seat right here. Please state your name and please spell your name.
Ayana Malang, Ayana, Malang, Mallang.
Thank you. Ms. Mullane, good afternoon. Can you tell us how old you are?
I'm 28 years old.
I can't hear very well. Can you get the microphone closer to me?
And turn to AC this microphone. One of these things you could clip to your shirt, your top, and
Oh. All right.
and then make sure that's turned on.
Um,
A little red light or something should go on. Is it on?
okay.
All right. Say something.
Something.
There you go. You can hear that better? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mullane. And I'll start over again. How old are you, Ms. Mullane?
I'm 28 years old.
And where do you reside?
On 96th and Ainsworth.
How long have you resided at that location?
For the last couple years currently, but I've lived there since I was a child.
How long total have you lived at that address or that location?
Since I moved back or since when I first moved in when I was a child?
Why don't you tell us like the total number of years you resided at that residence?
I believe about 17 years.
Ms. Mullane, were you living at that location back in March of 2020?
Yes.
And who did you live there with back on March 3rd, 2020?
I lived there with my 3 children, my fiance, my brother, his wife, and my 2 parents.
How old are your children?
Currently, they are 11, 9, and 4.
Back on March 3rd, 2020, who was all in the house that day?
My brother, his wife, my fiance, myself, and my 3 children.
And what is your brother's name?
Kenneth Ashford White.
And what is his wife's name?
It's currently his ex-wife. Her name is Ivy Nina.
And what is your fiance's name?
Jeremy Malang.
And you mentioned your parents. Were they home on March 3rd, 2020?
No, they were out of state.
And are you employed outside the home?
No.
Are you from the Tacoma area?
Yes.
And did you grow up in the Tacoma area?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a few questions regarding your house. Can you tell us how many floors there are to your house?
There is a basement, a main floor, and an attic.
And where is your room located?
My room is located on the main floor.
And what is in the attic?
My brother and his wife were living up in the upstairs attic at that point.
Your brother being Kenneth?
Yes.
And what about in the lower level?
That was where my parents resided.
Are there any windows in your, actually, where in the house is your room located?
It is in the front corner of the house, facing the street.
Do you have any windows facing the street in your room?
Yes. I have a large window facing the street, and then I have a side window that faces another house.
Ms. Millay, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 533N. And it has been previously admitted. I'm going to have you take a look at that. And Ms. Millay, do you recognize what that photo depicts?
Yes.
And what is that?
Depicts my front porch as well as the windows that are in the front of my bedroom and the one that's off to the side.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to step down and just point out on this TV here the windows that you're talking about.
This is my side bedroom window, and this is my front bedroom window.
We see looks like a small window up on the upper level with an AC conditioner. And is that Kennett's room?
Yes.
And is that the only window from the attic?
There is another window, but it is on the opposite side of the house.
Okay. So that is the only window facing the street from the attic?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Millay, I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 533E.
Okay.
And Ms. Millay, do you recognize what that photo depicts?
Yes, it is the view from my side bedroom window.
Okay. And is this a photo that you took or someone else took?
I believe this one is one I took.
Okay. And that's to show the vantage point from your bedroom window?
Yes.
And again, this is from your side window that you just showed us?
Yes.
Does the view from this window, was it substantially the same as it was back in March?
Yes.
3rd of 2020?
Yes.
Anything obstructing your view back in March 3rd of 2020 of the intersection?
No.
Showing you what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 533H. Do you recognize what this is?
Yes.
And what does this show?
This is depicting looking out the front bedroom window.
Okay. And is this the view that you would have had that night of March 3rd, 2020?
Yes.
Was there anything obstructing your view back on March 3rd, 2020?
Only the police vehicle that would have been in the same location as that vehicle that's there currently, and that pole. But those have all been there.
Okay. So nothing's changed about the scene from March 3rd, 2020?
No.
And obviously, the scene that took place occurred at night, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have you take a look at what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 151. And do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 151?
Yes, it's an aerial view of my corner.
Okay. I'm sorry, your corner?
The corner that I reside on.
Okay. And can you point out to us on this screen here where your house is located in relation to the intersection?
My house is this house right here.
Okay. And if I could have that marked. Thank you. And Ms. Millay, there's a red circle around the residence. Is that your house?
Yes.
All right. The state moves for mission of Exhibit 151F or H.
No objection.
151H is admitted.
Thank you. You could go ahead and take your seat.
Is our little pointer thing out there?
I don't see anything.
I don't know what happened to that.
Against the wall.
Oh, is this?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
When you're pointing, you might want to use that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Millay, is there a doorbell camera on your residence?
Yes, there is.
Where on the house is it located?
Can you pull up the picture of the front porch again?
If I could have Exhibit 533N, please.
All right. The door is slightly obstructing it, but it is about right here on the wall, right behind that door's view.
Great. If I could have that marked, please. Is that relatively accurate, or should it be moved a little bit over there?
Yes, that's about as accurate as you can get because it's the doorknob right here that's kind of covering where it would be.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
And if I could, Your Honor, State would move to admit Exhibit 151I, please.
This is 533, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, it's 533. Would that be A then?
Maybe O.
O? 5330.
5330, we all agreed? 5330.
It would be A. I don't have an O.
Well, that one's 533N. 533.
I'm at a different, never mind. Oh, it'll be O.
Okay, 5330.
500.
So 5330 has been offered. Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
I don't think you're on it.
Okay, 5330 is admitted. Thank you.
Ms. Mullane, do you know generally how the doorbell camera works?
If it picks up motion, it will start to record.
What about sound?
I do not know if sound triggers it.
Okay. Ms. Mullane, turning your attention to March 3rd, 2020, were you in that house that evening?
I was.
And who else was in the house that evening?
My brother, his wife, my fiance, myself, and my 3 children.
Did anything unusual occur that night?
Yes.
What time did you notice anything unusual?
Roughly about 11:30.
What were you doing at that time?
I had just finished shutting down the house and had gone to lay down.
And this is in the bedroom that you just indicated to us where the windows are?
Yes.
And what happened after that?
I heard a noise and I did not immediately get up and look because it's not uncommon living on a busy street to hear noise. Within about 30 seconds to a minute after hearing the noise continuing, I looked out my side window and I could see a man, a police officer, and a police vehicle stopped at the intersection with the man and the police officer standing at the front bumper of the police vehicle.
I'm going to back up a little bit. You indicated that you heard a noise.
Mm.
What type of noise did you hear?
Yelling, raised voices.
Could you tell whether it was a male voice or female voice?
Male voice.
Could you tell whether it was more than one voice or just one person's voice?
I believe it was 2 people's voices.
Could you actually hear what was being said or yelled at that point?
I could not hear at that point.
You indicated that you didn't react right away.
Mhm.
You indicated you lived in a busy street or busy corner.
Yes.
Do you typically hear noise outside?
Yes.
And let me ask you, did you have your windows closed that night?
My windows were closed.
Okay. How are you able to hear the noises outside?
My house is a very old house, and our windows are single pane windows.
You indicated that you looked out after 30 to 60 seconds. Is that accurate? Did I get that right?
Yes.
During those 30 to 60 seconds, did you hear anything? Did you notice anything?
Do not recall.
What prompted you to get up to look outside after the 30 to 60 seconds?
The noise continuing.
Had the noise changed at this point, or was it the same type of noise you heard earlier?
It was still raised voices.
Then once you looked out the window, are there blinds or curtains on your window?
There's a curtain.
And again, we're talking about your side window, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you actually have to get out of your bed in order to look outside?
I had to kneel on my bed in order to look outside. It's a raised window.
So the window is right above your bed then?
Yes.
Okay. So by kneeling, you're able to look outside?
Yes.
Now, you described seeing a patrol car, is that correct?
Yes.
And you saw figures in front of the patrol car?
Yes.
Tell us what you saw.
I could see the police officer in uniform and a man in civilian clothing. The police officer was attempting to grab and physically restrain the man in the civilian clothing. And the man was twisting and pulling away from the police officer, asking the officer to stop.
You actually you distinctly heard stop?
Yes.
How could you tell one of those figures was a police officer?
The police uniform.
What happened next?
As a result of their struggling, the police officer attempting to grab the man and the man attempting to twist away from the police officer's grip, I saw the man fall down about a foot to a foot and a half from the front of the bumper of the police unit. At that point, I looked away. My view was partially obstructed, so I looked away from the window and attempted to wake up my fiance.
Why did you do that?
Because when there's things going on outside of our house, we tend to kind of let each other know that something's going on.
What happened next?
While I was looking away from the window, I heard a woman's voice say something like, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop." So I moved from off of the bed over to my front-facing window, and I looked out. I could see the woman in her car yelling forward at the police officers, and then backwards talking to somebody in a car behind her. But when I looked over towards where the commotion was happening, my view was obstructed by the police vehicle and the pole that's right there. So I wasn't able to see it, and I went back to my side window.
How long were you at the front window, would you estimate?
Between 10 and 20 seconds.
What happened then when you moved to the side window?
When I went back to the side window, I could see the cop make a running kick towards the man who was still on the ground. It was a short distance, so it was only like one step to amp it up. And then I saw the cop lunge down and punch, and both the kick and the punch made contact with the man's body.
Where was this occurring?
In front of the police vehicle, but more towards the crosswalk intersection area. In the struggle, they had moved slightly forward.
And Ms. Millay, I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 151, the overview of the scene of the intersection. And I'm going to again ask you to show us where you saw the patrol car.
Okay. The patrol car was right here. And the lines of the crosswalk are not very clear in this, but the crosswalk is right here. Sorry.
Try to keep your voice up, man.
The lines of the crosswalk are not visible in this picture, but the crosswalk is right here in front of.
Okay. Does the location of the red mark, is that accurate or does it need to be moved?
That looks accurate.
Okay. And you indicated you observed the officer kicking and lunging down at the man. Where did that take place?
Right about here.
If we could have that marked, please. So approximately in front of the patrol car?
Yes.
All right, thank you. If I could have that admitted as Exhibit 151, 8J, is it? I.
151I? Yes. Any objection?
Aye.
151, any objection to 151?
That was aye, correct. 151 aye.
151I, okay.
Yeah, I have no objection.
No objection.
Surprised no one said aye, aye. 151I is admitted.
Ms. Millay, I'm going to ask you actually a few questions about your vision. Do you wear contacts, or back in March of 2020, did you wear contacts or glasses?
I was supposed to be wearing glasses at that time, but I did not currently own a pair at that time.
And why is that?
It wasn't within my budget at that moment to go and get prescription eyeglasses.
Are you able to see without your glasses?
Yes, I can see a great deal without my glasses.
Are you farsighted or nearsighted, or do you know what those terms mean?
I believe it's nearsighted. It's the one where you can see far, but as you get out further, you aren't able to see as much details.
Do you know what your prescription is, what your eye prescription is?
I have submitted it to you guys.
Is your understanding, based on your understanding, is your prescription mild or strong, or?
It's mild.
Did you have any trouble seeing or viewing the scene that night without your glasses?
No.
Okay. How were you able to differentiate between the police officer and the man?
The clothing, mostly.
But you were able to, without your glasses, be able to
Yes.
differentiate a police officer from a.
Yes, I could clearly see that one was in uniform and one was in civilian clothing.
Now, going back to what you observed, you were telling us that you saw an officer kick, then lunge down. At this point, did you believe that there was only one officer at the scene, or were there more than one officer at the scene?
I believe that there was only one officer at the scene.
Okay. Did you see a second officer at the scene?
No, I only saw one officer at a time when I saw an officer.
And then you saw a lunge. Describe that motion for us. What did it look like?
From being standing up and rotating downward like you're going to punch something down below you.
Do you recall how many times you saw that occur?
I believe I saw it twice, but I can clearly recollect one.
Did you hear any noises at this point? Any noises, any yells?
I could hear grunting from the man making his attempts to get away, and I believe I could hear him say stop a couple of times.
What do you say when you saw the man try to get away? What do you describe that for us? What did you see about that?
Twisting away from the officer's grip, trying to get away from the grip that was holding him.
And was the man on the ground at this point, or was he still on his feet? What do you recall about that?
The man was on the ground at this time.
Are you able to see or tell what position he was on the ground?
I do not clearly recall.
What happened then after you saw the punches?
Sorry, my nerves are getting in the way a bit. Can I please review my statement that I provided?
At this point, Ms. Malang, you indicated that you would like to review your handwritten notes that you brought in court with you to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
All right.
Any objection from anybody?
No objection, no comment.
Okay.
If I may approach, Your Honor.
Sure. Ms. Malang, can you tell us when you created this note?
I made it in preparation because I made it in preparation during this last week because I have a hard time with my nerves when I'm in public situations or speaking in front of a lot of people. And I didn't want to forget things that were important.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
Ms. Malang, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit, State's Exhibit 897. I'm going to have you take a moment to review this exhibit to help you refresh your memory. I don't want you to read it out loud. Read it to yourself. Once you're done, just go ahead and look up that.
Okay.
Ms. Malang, after reviewing your notes, does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay. The question was, what happened after you saw the officer lunging and punching the man?
I could hear the man pleading for the officer to stop. And then I heard a taser arc buzz. A police officer stepped into the turn lane and directed the traffic behind to continue driving and to move along. I looked away from the window again to try to get my fiance's attention. And when I looked... Oh, no, it's turned upside down.
I'll just take the exhibit
Okay.
here.
If you need it back, let us know.
Okay.
You were saying that you were trying to rouse your fiance again?
Yes. So I had looked away from the scene to try to get my fiance's attention again. And when I looked back out the side window, I could see the man on the ground with a police officer kneeled with his body on top of him, and the man was stating that he could not breathe. At that point, I heard another taser arc. About a minute later, I saw 2 more officers run from the corner diagonal of the scene over to where the man and the officer were on the ground. And then about 30 to 45 seconds after that, there was a much larger police response, and my view was mostly obstructed by police vehicles, police lights, and police personnel making a kind of circle wall around the scene with their bodies. At that point, I had my phone and I had recorded a small clip of them standing, making their body wall around the man. And then I had stopped watching for a bit.
Ms. Mullane, thank you. I'm going to back up a little bit, sort of what you just told us here. You described.
We're past my break point, so we'll take our break at this time.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, take an afternoon break for about 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. And, please come back and. Continue, Mr. Luke.
Ms. Delane, before the break, you had described a series of events. I just want to back up a little bit. I believe you indicated that you saw the man on the ground with an officer kneeling on top
Yes.
of the man. Now, we're referring to this man. Did you later learn who this man is?
Yes.
And who is that?
Manuel Ellis.
Have you ever met Mr. Ellis prior to this evening
No.
that we're talking about? You indicated that you heard him plead to the officer to stop.
Yes.
What was his tone of voice?
A panicked tone.
What did you hear to make you think that it was a panicked tone?
His pleading and just the tone itself sounded as though he was pleading urgently.
You described then hearing a taser arc. Describe that sound. Actually, what does it mean what does a taser arc sound mean to you?
The sound that the taser makes when it is being activated, so it's kind of like a zzz kind of sound.
Have you heard that sound before?
Yes.
On what occasion?
In demonstrations of how tasers are used at the fair booths where they show this is how this device works. When I've previously looked into self-defense devices and on TV.
Do you recall when you heard the sound of the taser in relation to the events?
One of the taser sounds that I heard was
Your Honor, just for clarification, whether it's first, second, or third, or whatever the number she's referring to.
yes. The first taser sound that I heard was immediately before the officer directed the traffic to go around, and then the second one that I heard was when I looked back out the window and the man was on the ground with the police officer on top of him.
Did you see or hear a reaction after the taser sound?
I heard the man grunting.
Describe that sound for us. What did it sound like?
Muffled, forced air sounds, and but louder.
Is that when the air gets knocked out of you?
Yes. Or like when you're wrestling around on the ground and the sounds that you would make in the tumbling.
You indicated that he pleaded for the officer to stop. Do you recall how many times you heard this man saying stop?
About 5 or 6.
5 or 6 times?
Yes.
Do you recall over the span of how many minutes? How long?
It would have been over the span of 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes.
You also indicated that you heard him say, "I can't breathe."
Yes.
How many times did you hear that?
I heard it one time by itself before the taser deployed, and then I heard it a couple times back to back like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
Going to the first instance where you heard the I can't breathe by itself, you said it was before the taser.
Before the second taser deployment, I believe.
What was the tone of that voice?
A little bit clearer, more like a raised voice yell.
When did the next occasion occur?
When the man was on the ground with the officer on top of him.
When in relation to the taser applications did you hear this?
Sorry, the second set?
Yes, the second set of I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
I believe 30 seconds, within 30 seconds after.
And what was the tone of that voice?
Much more urgent, pleading.
You indicate pleading. What makes you think that he was what would it sound like when he was pleading, as you were describing pleading?
He was saying, please, sir, stop. Then the repeated, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
In total, how many times did you hear, and again, we're referring to a man, but you later learned that it was Mr. Ellis, is that correct?
Yes.
How many times did you hear Mr. Ellis say, I can't breathe?
4 or 5 times.
You're inside your house as you're hearing this, is that correct?
Yes.
You indicated that at some point additional officers arrived at the scene.
Yes.
What did you see of the additional officers? What did you see them do?
I saw them run from the corner diagonal towards the scene and try to assist in restraining the man on the ground.
And do you mean they were trying to assist the man on the ground or
Trying to assist the other officer.
Did you recall what you saw of that? How were they assisting?
No, I don't think I was watching. Like, I think at that point I had looked back away from the window.
Once you looked back away from the window, did you go to the window after that?
Yes, I went.
Let me make this. My understanding is she was looking from the side window, then went to the front window, then went to the side window.
Yes.
When you said after you left one window, you went to look to the window again, I don't know which place we're at. I don't know whether she left, came back again. So we can get the sequence down, so we're not sort of retreading something and think we're plowing new ground.
Thank you. So I'll re-ask the question, Ms. Mullane. So when you described seeing the backup officer, or the 2 additional officers arrive, were you looking out the side window at this point or the front window?
I was looking out the side window.
How long did you stay at the side window for that occasion?
roughly about 10-15 seconds.
And this is when you describe the backup officers assisting?
Yes,
with-
running over to assist at the scene, yes.
And then after this 10 to 15 seconds, is that when you then turned from the window?
Yes.
And what did you do after turning from the window?
I believe I had looked back to see if my fiance was there. And then I looked back out the window,
Okay. Which window did you look back out?
the side window.
What did you see next?
At that point, it would have been about a minute after the two officers had run from the diagonal corner, and I could see a much larger police response.
Do you recall how many officers you saw?
There was probably at least 15 police vehicles.
You described officers then blocking your view of Mr. Ellis, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall how many bodies, how many officers you saw at that point in time?
Standing around Mr. Ellis,
Yes.
I
I don't think there was an answer to the number of officers. I think she said something about the number of vehicles.
I think between 6 and 8.
Could you see Mr. Ellis at this point?
I could see a body on the ground that I assumed to be Mr. Ellis at that point.
Could you see what was occurring, what was happening at that moment?
No, the police officers' bodies that were circled around the man on the ground obstructed the view.
And are you still at the side window at this point?
Yes.
How long did you stay at that side window?
I believe 5 to 10 seconds from that, because I had moved. I attempted to see if I could see it from the front window again, and the front window is where I took the video of the police officers standing in their circle wall formation around the man on the ground.
Ms. DeLay, I'm going to ask you to take a look at State's Exhibit 533G. I'm sorry, 533D. Do you recognize what's depicted on 533D?
Yes.
And what is that?
That is a view from inside my window.
Okay. And does that show your position, how you would have looked outside your window
Yes.
that night? All right. And this has been previously admitted as 533D. And we'll just, oh, there it is, okay. And Ms. Belaine, does that show how you're positioned that night as you're looking out your side window?
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 533G. And what does 533G show, Ms. Blaine?
My view from the front window.
Is that where your position as you're looking out that night?
Yes. At the point in which I was looking out at the woman the woman that yelled and her car, that is where I was standing. The window towards the opposite end is where I was taking that first video clip that I just talked about.
If I could ask you to step down and show us which
Yes.
part of the window you were taking the video from.
This part of the window.
All right. Thank you. When you heard Mr. Ellis say he can't breathe, over what time span are we talking about? How long?
Objection, that's asked and answered.
I think it was, but I'll permit this.
2 minutes. Roughly a minute and a half to 2 minutes.
You mentioned the videos that you took that night. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 21. And I'm going to play that just for you and see and tell me if you recognize what's being played there. Exhibit 22, I'm sorry.
It's 21 or 2.
22. And Ms. Belaine, do you recognize that video?
Yes.
Is that the video that you took that night?
Yes.
State offers Exhibit 22, Your Honor.
I have no objection, Your Honor.
I don't have an objection, but the one we saw didn't have sound. Does it 22 have the sound?
It does. We just didn't want to play it.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
22 is admitted.
State offers, or state moves to publish Exhibit 22.
No objection.
Proceed.
Thank you.
There's somebody in the middle of that doggy pile.
Is that your voice, Ms. Millane?
Yes.
You took a second video that night, is that correct?
Yes.
Showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit number 23. I'm going to play that just for you and see if you recognize that video.
Yes, I recognize that video.
And what is that? What is Exhibit 23?
That video is about 15 minutes after the scene began, when fire and first response had arrived to tend to Mr. Ellis.
And is this the video that you took that night?
Yes.
State offers Exhibit 23, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
23 is admitted.
State moves to publish, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Ms. Belang, you indicated that you took this video approximately 15 minutes after the incident began.
Yes.
What about the Exhibit 22? Do you recall when you...
It would have been about 2 minutes after the scene had begun.
During the beginning part of the scene, when you first looked out the window and you see the struggle between the officer and the man, who's later identified Mr. Ellis, did you ever see the man strike the officer?
I did not.
Did you ever see this man attack the officer?
I did not.
Sustained.
Ms. Blank, do you know any, I believe you indicated you did not know Mr. Ellis, is that correct?
I did not know him.
Did you know the woman that was in the car that you saw yelling?
No.
Did you know any of the other witnesses on the scene?
No.
You were interviewed subsequently by State Patrol, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall when that took place?
I believe it was in June of that same year.
And that you were then interviewed by the defense in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
And that was with Mr. Fricky, an investigator for the defense?
Yes.
And do you recall when that occurred?
I do not recall the timeline.
Was it fairly recently?
Yes.
Thank you. Go for questions.
Explanation, Mr. Fricky?
Good afternoon, Ms. Delaney. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I think when we interviewed him, known as White, because that's what your name was when this happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And since that time, you got married to the person who was your fiance that you described earlier.
Yes.
Right? And so, just to be clear, I obviously have some questions to ask of you. But the interviews that you actually had, do you recall having 3 interviews by chance?
Yes.
Okay. And was the first one, the one you mentioned, I think in June 7th of 2020, shortly after this incident? Do you recall the detectives being there, being a Detective Folden, and I believe it's a Detective Helmke from Pierce County, I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, from Pierce County Sheriff's Department?
I do not recall their names, but if it's in there, then yes.
Yeah, and so that was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, do you recall if that one was taped or was just taken notes?
All of them have been recorded, I believe.
And then there was a second interview, at least, on February 3rd, 2021. Do you recall that interview?
Yes.
And the people present there was a person, if you remember the names, Detective Rue, do you recall that name?
Yes.
And Kent Lou, who just talked to you here a moment ago.
Yes.
I recall him being present.
Yes.
And a Lieutenant Richmond from the WSP, Washington State Patrol.
Yes, sounds correct.
Does that sound about right? Those three guys?
I believe, yes.
Okay. I guess my question, anyone else there?
I do not recall.
Okay. And then, as you just indicated, you and I, along with my investigator, you call his name being Ron Bone, doing an interview. If I told you that was on May 3rd of this year, would that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay. Was this in the spring?
Yes.
Sometime, okay. You don't disagree with that?
I don't.
And you've basically, I guess, for lack of a better word, been cooperative. If people wanted to talk to you, so long as you could work at your schedule, you would talk to them. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you did it with Pierce County Sheriff's Department, you did it with the AG's office, you did it with myself and my investigator.
Yes.
And as you indicated, all those interviews were taped,
Yes.
one way or another. Have you had a chance to read, have you had a chance to either listen to the tapes of the interviews that you gave or read any transcript of those tapes?
Yes. I have had a chance to review them.
Okay. And when did you review those you read the transcripts or you listened to them, or both?
I received my interview stuff with you and the defense in the yesterday, and then
Recently, yeah.
yes. So I did not have a chance to completely review that. I received copies of the other interviews in, I think, the last couple months, maybe 2.
Okay, so in recent times, basically.
Yes.
And the last couple interviews are the ones you're referring from June of 2020 and February of 2021. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And is it also fair to say, as far as, I'll call them formal interviews, those are the only 3 that you've given? Is that accurate?
Yes.
You've had some contacts beyond that, but they weren't so formal. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And in those interviews, is it fair to say you were trying to be honest? Whoever was questioning you, you were trying to be honest. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't care who it was. You were given the best of your ability, your recollection of what happened this particular night on
Yes.
March 3rd of 2020. Okay. And so, first of all, if we could pull up that exhibit number 22, which is the tape here, your first video that you just watched here a moment ago. Things take a moment. So. If we could play that and look at it, I guess you can look at your screen there, so. And I'm gonna, if we pause it right there. And is that the best view you had when watching what was going on outside of your residence?
That is the best view that I had after the other responding units had arrived.
Okay. Prior to that, did you, and this is your first video, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so the second video obviously is after the responding officers arrived as well.
Yes.
Prior to that video being taken from you, your phone, did you have a better view?
Yes. I had a better view from my side window above my bed.
And in the side window view, this is from the front window, correct?
Yes.
And I think you indicated it was on, you pointed, but I think it was on the, as you're looking out on the left side of that big window. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And from that view, your best view that you had, were you able to see what's going on immediately in front of the police vehicle. Do you understand my question?
Sorry, at which,
No, I
can you,
rephrase it.
yes.
So I'm trying to get what you could see in your best view.
Mhm.
And my question is, if that's the location of the police vehicle in the street, and that is the first police vehicle that you saw, is that correct?
Yes,
And that never moved from when you saw it, right?
it did not move.
Okay. Your best view that you saw,
Mhm.
your eyes, before you filmed, it's not on film, could you see immediately in front of the police vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, all the way?
My view, because of the angle, is partially obstructed over towards the passenger side of the vehicle.
Okay. And by that you mean, first of all.
I
you're
wouldn't be
not-
able to see, like the foot in front, within a foot in front of it is the farther end of the vehicle from where I was standing.
Okay. And a foot fully in front of the vehicle you're talking about?
If someone was laying down in that vicinity,
You wouldn't be able to see that person.
I would be able to only see their feet poking out towards the driver's side.
And so if I were to put it this way, is it fair to say you would not be able to see the passengers, the headlight on the passenger side of the vehicle? Is that
Yes,
accurate?
that's fair to say.
Okay. And as you're moving towards the center of the vehicle, would you be able to see the center grille of the vehicle?
No, I do not believe so.
And as you move further towards and I'm moving towards the driver's side. As you move further towards the driver's side, your view's going to get less and less obstructed. Is that fair characterization?
Yes.
Okay. And so, and if a person's on the ground in front of the vehicle, I think you just indicated, you certainly, only thing you would be able to see, and you correct me if I'm wrong, would be if, depending on the position of the person and how close he was to the vehicle, what would the portion of his body that extended towards the driver's side headlight area, is that accurate?
Yes.
And for instance, when, I mean, you're, other than what you have seen on TV, you've always been under, prior to these other officers arriving, you've always been under the impression there was a single officer, correct?
Yes, I never saw two police officers at the same exact time.
Prior to this. So for instance, prior to this meeting, prior to
Yes,
the
prior
other-
to the,
All right.
yes.
And so you,
Well, no, I don't know what you mean by prior to this. Prior to what?
Prior to the large police response.
like what she said,
Prior to large police response.
yeah.
Okay.
You on the same page? If I could rephrase it, it was poorly worded, I will grudgingly concede that. Is that- So, let's put it this way. That was your best, that, what we're discussing was the view when only one police car was there.
Yes.
Okay. And for instance, when you were describing what you saw, you talked with one officer, again, that's all you saw.
Yes.
And he was on his feet, right? Initially.
Yes. When I first witnessed them, both men were on their feet.
Okay. And that was, and they were in front of the vehicle,
Yes.
is that right? And they were towards the driver's side of the vehicle, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And towards the front would be the left headlight of the vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, my request of the interview, you kind of sketched it out. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Have you looked at that sketch when you were looking at the interviews here recently?
No, I had not.
Okay. And you were trying to be as accurate as possible, is that fair to say?
Yes.
So I'm gonna ask if we can pull up exhibit number 2916. Pop up on your screen here in a moment. And that's not for publication, by the way. Before, page through this.
Yes.
And that's your piece of art, right?
Yes.
You're better than me. But you dated that, and that was on May 3rd of this year, right?
Yes.
And you also signed it. Correct?
Yes.
And that was what, when you were sketching that out at my request, what you were trying to show is when you first, the positioning of the officer, when you first saw him, as well as the person, Manuel Ellis, you didn't know at that time, right?
Yes.
Is that an accurate, that's your recollection of the position of those two individuals?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to move for the admission of that particular page of that exhibit, which is 29, exhibit 2916. I got to give it a letter, but I understand that.
Well, what I got is these baffled faces over here, like, how are we gonna do that? That's what it looked like to me.
How are we going to do what?
Just cut out just this one page.
Because he's looking at you. So
I'm looking at Mr. Osser, I'm looking at Mr. Pertzer,
It's a multi-page document.
right,
He's asking you if in a single page is a multi-page document.
right, we can't do that.
Just mark the page and have that admitted?
Well, we could mark it as another exhibit, yes,
okay, well,
conceivably. That's why I say they're looking at me like, how are we gonna do that? It's possible. I guess the thing is, you don't want anything but this page as an exhibit, right?
well, at least not at this time, but I do want that page, and I don't think the other part of it's appropriate as far as
All right.
the summary of the report.
I just wanna confirm this, so
I'm going to pull it out of my,
we're gonna call this 2916A.
they gave you.
We pull it out of 2916,
I think we're gonna have to.
or do we
I can get this marked right now. Yeah, we want that page printed.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. It's gonna be this page. We may pull it out of 2,916, or if you guys can agree on a copy of it, we can just make it as a separate exhibit and label it separately. Have you showed this to all the council?
Same page.
We're happy to agree to it, Your Honor, separate to that.
No objection to that page, Judge.
That's fine,
All right, so Mrs. Winnie Mark, this is 2916A, and as I gather, there's no objection to its admission.
None, Your Honor. Okay. There we are.
2916A will be admitted.
We're all on the same page. That's it.
You just couldn't resist, could you?
So, Sean, can you put slides that page there? Publish it. And if you can, for the jury, I think, well, you use the pointer, you can point out to the jury, just explain it how you explained it to me.
All right. This is a rough drawing of a police vehicle, the car doors, and the steering wheel. This is the front bumper. This is where Manuel Ellis was standing, and this is where the police officer was standing.
And that's that's a sketch of the very first moment you saw them, is that accurate?
Yes.
And when you saw them there, both the police officer and Mr. Ellis were standing, correct?
Yes.
And right at that point, and you can sit down, I appreciate that. At that point, you had not, you had actually, you were responding to what you heard out in the street.
Yes.
Right? And what you heard at the street at that point in time were two males yelling,
Yes. Raised voices.
raised voices. But you don't recall the words at that point, is that accurate?
I do not recall. Yes.
Okay. You did not hear the woman's voice yet, is that accurate?
I did not hear the woman's voice yet.
And you hear that later?
Yes.
Okay. And when you heard her voice, how much time would you estimate went by between that moment and when you heard her screaming?
10, 15 seconds.
Okay? Shortly thereafter.
Yes.
And they were, was it Mr., could you tell when you first saw this, whether it was Mr. Ellis approaching the police officer approaching Mr. Ellis, or a combination of the two?
I did not see one or the other approach each other. When I looked out, they were already next to each other.
Okay. And I'm going to ask, thank you for this, and ask that Exhibit 166 be pulled up. And actually, I'm going to have to state, because I need to have it sketched on, if I may.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I'm going to have to ask the state this, I'm going to ask her to point out and have it do the red circle. That's
And then, again, this is exhibit,
166.
thank you.
And I don't think it's been admitted yet, so I have to have it.
If you're gonna have the market too, I suppose it's an issue, but no, I don't think
It's marked, I know that.
I don't think 166 has been admitted yet.
Correct.
And we're we're at 4 o'clock now, so,
So, and then-
well, I don't, you wanna just finish this, and then we'll take our break?
Yeah. Does she have that? Ms. Long, do you see that?
Yes.
You see it in front of you, and that's the police car, right?
Yes.
And that shows the front of the police car, would you agree?
Yes.
Are you able to use that exhibit to take your sketch that you had and kind of point out where the officer and Mr. Ellis were standing when you first saw him?
How would you like me to do that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask you, do you think, can you do it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, and that vehicle looks the same condition as it did that evening, to the best of your recollection?
Yes, I believe.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of Exhibit 166, number 1.
No objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Luke?
No objection.
166 is admitted.
Now, if we publish.
Go ahead.
Now, this is where it picks up. If you can use that pointer and you'll point out to where, let's first of all say where the officer was positioned.
The officer would have been positioned about here.
Okay? And he's standing from that spot, right?
Yes.
And so is it fair to say he would have been right in front of the headlight, approximately?
Yes.
Okay, if we can draw that in there. All right? And Mr. Ellis.
Well, can I just, I mean, I don't wanna interrupt you, but where that is, the officer's foot would be underneath the car.
Yes. It would need
It's
to
a
be
big
moved
circle.
slightly forward.
Okay, slightly forward? Okay, we move it beyond the white line there?
Yes, because this would be in the
Fair
way of the body standing.
Fair enough. That look better?
Yes.
Okay? And where would Mr. Ellis be positioned?
Directly next to, in the area also.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right, I would move for the admission of exhibit, and we'll call it 166A at this point.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
166A is admitted.
Is this a good time to stop, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll take our recess for the evening. We'll need to see you back tomorrow morning, Mr. Mullane. Everybody be here, you guys be here at your regular times. Please do not discuss case among yourselves with anyone else. Please do not permit anyone to discuss case with you in your presence. Have a great evening.